So I guess from my perspective, from someone who like would just put the time into a video game if I liked it enough and like wanted to get good at it, good enough at it to beat it, I don't think that video games need an easy mode. In fact, I would say that more video games need to like think about when to implement an easy mode. Cause there's certain games like the example that Omni used, kind of, right? The thing that he brought up was Bennett Foddy, right? And how that game was like incredibly impossible. You know, I haven't actually played through the game myself. So yeah, the thing is you're grinding the game in order to become better at it, not necessarily just like to up levels. Cuz my opinion of that is like games should scale accordingly. You know, like I typically don't like grinding in games for levels because then it's just me doing the same thing and I feel like I'm not really learning anything. But if it's something like Bennett Foddy or even this game, right? I think the difficulty in them helps to stress what the game's going for. The point of this game is to make you feel like you could die at basically any moment, right? It's the atmosphere that it presents is like relatively eerie, right? The theme is kind of dim, but like at the same time pretty colorful and charming. So the idea behind that, I think, is that the goal of the game is to make you feel like it's dim and kind of helpless, right? Like you're helpless. And that just wouldn't be the case. Like the idea wouldn't meld as well if it were an easy game, because this game's hard, right? Like I've put a bunch of time into it, so like I know the ins and outs of this game, so like it's somewhat easy for me. But that's just because like I like the game. I think in adding an easy mode, right? Let's just say you starved less, or like enemies spawned less, they did less damage, things like that. I think it would take away from the theme of the game. And there's a similar theme in Bennett Foddy too, right? Because in Bennett Foddy, the entire point of the game is that it's hard, right? Like you can say whatever you want of the game, but like if you listen to what it is that the narrator says throughout the game, and if you think about the themes that it's saying, then Bennett Foddy as a game is meant to be hard, and it's meant to be like unforgiving. If it wasn't either of those, I think the game would be significantly worse. Because the entire point of that game is like being able to overcome struggle, not necessarily for a reward, right? Because you're not really getting anything from beating Bennett Foddy other than the sense of accomplishment and like the challenge that is presented to you. So I think taking having an easy mode to that game would ultimately make the entire theme a bit less meaningful. Like that's the entire point of the game, and I think adding an easy mode does a disservice to that message. But that's just me. Like I understand that people do like sometimes just want to get through games, right? They just want to be able to win. They want to be able to experience a story, which like there's something to be said about that, right? There's something to be said about story-based games having an easy mode, and like that easy mode just being there for the purpose of exploring the story. But at the same time, if it's a game where the entire point of it is to like be kind of dim and dark, and like for it to give off the impression that you're in a wasteland and like things seem hopeless, it makes sense for a game in that sense to be harder, and like for it to not have an easy mode. Because if anything, that adds to the overall story and the theme of the game. Or the person that Omni was reacting to, right? Well, I say reacting, he was more so addressing them. But like the entire thing that she was talking about was like Hollow Knight. She brought up that as an example. And I also haven't played Hollow Knight. Like there are a lot of games that I need to get to, is what I'm realizing, that like exemplify the point. But I'm familiar with it. A lot of the people that I enjoy watching content of have played through Hollow Knight, and so I've watched the content. And like, game seems hard, and I feel like it's fitting within the span of the game. Because what I'm gonna point to, right, is there is one instance in particular where, spoilers for Hollow Knight, by the way. I'm probably gonna butcher it also, so pretty bad spoilers for Hollow Knight, even. But there's a segment where, like, it's revealed to you that a bunch of different monsters, right? Like a bunch of basically U's. There's just like a pile of them under the world, and the in-story, like in-world explanation for that is that all of those are like people who came before you, and they just couldn't step up to overcome all the challenges that the world presented. So the fact that you make it to that point, I think, pushes the narrative forward a bit. That, like, yeah, things are obviously hopeless, and like, why would you be any different? You know, which is a pretty dark thing to say as a video game, but at the same time, it makes sense within the story, since like everything is dim and like you're literally like the civilization is built on the graves of like previous U's, basically. So overall, I think it kind of Celeste assist mode, yeah, like it tells you right away it's not the way it's meant to play. Yeah, exactly, things like that, right? Like, be forward about the fact that this is a hard game, right? Be like, hey, this is actually Celeste easy mode kind of pushes forward my point a bit, because Celeste is also a game where like the entire point is to overcome the struggle and the difficulty. So having an easy mode is kind of cheapens that, you know, because while yeah, people may not have as many gamer skills, on the other hand of that, like the fact that people might struggle to different extents of one another kind of like pushes forward the idea that Celeste is pushing. Like, yeah, people struggle in different ways, and people gotta like cope with that. You might have a harder time or an easier time even playing through Celeste and like getting over everything that Celeste represents, right? But like either way, it's fine so long as you keep pushing forward, so long as you keep striving for it. Like, that's more than anything what I think the theme that difficult video games, like a lot of difficult video games too, are pushing. Not just Celeste. Like, not just Celeste, Hollow Knight, or Bennett Foddy. It's like, to an extent, this game too, just in a different way. But I think it's interesting, right? I think it's interesting the idea that games need to have an easy mode to them, because there is merit to it. It's not. My initial reaction, right, as a gamer, was just Lamau, get good, simply play better, right? And she says that like immediately. she's like, oh, all you fucking gamers who are just gonna be like, Lamau, get better, get good, it's fucking dog shit, blah 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 blah. Like, everybody who says that, like, just leave. Like, who cares? We get it, you're good. It is just a skill issue though. Like, the entire time I was watching the video, because I watched it a few times, because I had to get over that, because I was just constantly thinking to myself, Lamau's skill issue. But in a way, difficulty helps to push the narrative of certain games. It helps like put emphasis on the idea that you're moving through something that's difficult, and because it's difficult means that overcoming the challenge in and of itself is the reward. But that's my opinion. You know, that's just what my stance on it is. Of course, that doesn't apply to all games, right? Like, if we look like at a Telltale series game, right? We look at something like that. I don't think people play that game for the challenge, right? And I don't think the challenge necessarily adds anything to the story. Like, the hard modes and like easy mode in Telltale games are like arbitrary for the most part. And it doesn't really matter whether you play on one or the other than like if you just want to show off your gamer skills or whatever. And even then, there are better games to do that with. But yeah, I think it's just an interesting question. But maybe I'll play. I'm probably not gonna play Bennett Foddy though. I've seen that game, and I know what, like, how much you have to commit to playing that game, and I appreciate it, right? I appreciate it for what it is. I just don't really wanna. I just don't really wanna do that, is the thing. But I appreciate it, Bennett Foddy. I appreciate what it was you were going for. I appreciate that you took the time to make the game and, like, you refused to make it harder. Because there's this segment where he's talking about, like, as a game developer, he would come to a point that was, like, impossibly challenging. But he couldn't bring himself to lower the difficulty. Right? And, like, I think that speaks a lot to, the philosophy of, honestly, Hollow Knight, Celeste, and, like, just a bunch of games. A bunch of games that are inherently difficult, but also equally as rewarding.